A dark pact is emerging between the sacred nation and its age-old adversaries. To the untrained eye, it looks like mere diplomacy, a historic milestone, a promise of hope. Authorities hail it as the covenant of the Millennium, selling the illusion of everlasting peace in the Middle East. But those who see through the veil, those who interpret the scriptures and understand prophetic revelation, recognize the terrifying truth. We are witnessing the beginning of the fulfillment of Daniel 9's prophecy. Confidential sources from international outlets at the epicenter of the Middle East reveal that a former president from the Americas, recently re-emerging from the shadows of global power, is orchestrating the boldest negotiation of the past few decades. The official narrative? To pacify the Middle East by uniting the people of Zion with their ancient enemies through a triple alliance: political, economic, and religious. What the world celebrates as diplomacy, the Holy Word exposes as a harbinger of the end, the beginning of the 70 weeks foretold by Daniel. This movement unfolds in perfect synchrony with the rise of a new global religious leader, a seductively charismatic figure, diplomatically gifted and mysteriously aligned with this initiative. And herein lies the fatal trap. Biblical prophecy never promised true peace before the end. It warns that a covenant will be confirmed with many, but will be violently broken halfway through, unleashing a period of spiritual and political devastation upon the whole earth. In this video, we will unveil undeniable evidence that underpins our warning. We will reveal the true nature of this covenant of the Millennium and why powerful forces are treating it as an unprecedented event within the hidden halls of global power. The identities of the shadow manipulators behind this scheme and their direct ties to biblical prophecy. How this treaty fits with alarming precision into the prophetic structure of Daniel chapter 9. And finally, what the spiritual stance must be for those who can see beyond official lies, recognizing the apocalyptic season we are now living in. Do not mistake this message for sensational speculation. These are hard facts intertwined with the eternal word. We are witnessing a prophetic scenario that will alter the course of history, truths deliberately suppressed by mainstream media and silenced in the pulpits of sleeping churches. But before we go any further, I want to know, where are you watching this video from? Leave a comment below. We want to bring God's message to people across the globe. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this video so that more people can awaken to the truth. What the global powers are calling the covenant of the Millennium is merely the visible facade of a cosmic plan unfolding in the shadows. On the surface, it presents itself as mere diplomacy, a move to normalize relations between the state of Kadesh, sacred land marked by divine prophecies, and a strategic coalition of nations from the Eastern Crescent. The full document remains hidden from the public, but leaked intel from internal sources reveals a proposal involving territorial divisions, the transfer of control over sacred sites to global religious authorities, and most alarmingly, a mutual recognition pact that redefines Jerusalem. This element is crucial. Any treaty that positions Jerusalem as an internationalized capital or places it under shared religious authority instantly triggers prophetic signs. Daniel 9:27 leaves no room for ambiguity. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. For that sacrifice to be stopped, it must first be reinstated. The conclusion is inevitable. Something is being orchestrated to allow worship at the temple once again, whether in its political or spiritual form. This is where the covenant of the Millennium fits perfectly. Confidential documents analyzed by scholar Amir Ben-Dan from the University of Haifa reveal that the treaty establishes a neutral space of multi-religious worship on the Holy Mount. The project is presented as a symbol of tolerance designed to unite Christians, Jews, and Muslims. But those who understand Revelation 13 and 2 Thessalonians 2 see the truth. What we are witnessing is not peace, but the stage being set for universal worship of a false Messiah. The treaty carries direct endorsement from a religious figure recently elevated in Rome, hailing from South America, whose charismatic influence has the power to fuse historically opposing spiritual streams. This leader, previously kept in the shadows of the Vatican, mysteriously rose to prominence following the unexplained resignation of the former pontiff, an event already laced with prophetic signs. These developments go far beyond diplomatic maneuvers. When the scriptures warn of peace and safety, they expose a time of collective illusion, a moment when humanity lets down its guard, believing it has achieved harmony. But the verse delivers a fatal warning. Then sudden destruction will come upon them, like labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they shall not escape. The real threat of the covenant of the Millennium doesn't lie in its promises, but in what it deliberately conceals. The prophecy points to a prince who will establish this pact. At first, he will be hailed as a peacemaker, a savior of humanity, but at the appointed time, his true identity will be revealed. This may be the most sophisticated spiritual trap of our era, confusing the seductive words of the Lamb with the destructive intentions of the dragon. Are you examining these events with spiritual discernment? Or are you being hypnotized by the headlines, dismissing this as just another diplomatic agreement? This moment demands eyes that see beyond the veil, because while the world lifts its glasses in celebration, heaven watches in disturbing silence. The prophetic stage doesn't merely await the right time, it demands the right setting. And now the pieces on the global chessboard are aligning before our eyes with alarming speed. At the epicenter of this transformation stands Matthew Rosenberg, the Western leader who, after a strategic exile, returns with a hidden mission to establish what he calls the new order of global peace. With messianic and carefully crafted rhetoric, Rosenberg is hailed as the man of reconciliation by politicians, religious figures, and diplomats alike. His re-emergence was paved with promises of harmony and prosperity, but those who know the scriptures recognize in him the precise profile of the prince who is to come, as prophesied by Daniel. Alongside him rises Dom Elias Benedicto, the charismatic religious leader from Argentina, who mysteriously assumed supreme power after the sudden resignation of his predecessor. In record time, he won over global media and gained the respect of spiritual leaders with his seductive mantra, "Faith must unite the world." Together in the shadows, Rosenberg and Benedicto hold secret meetings with heads of state, Islamic leaders, and representatives from powerful entities, the Davos Forum, the Council of Peaceful Nations, and the Organization for Global Dialogue. The clearest sign: both appeared in Kadesh to seal the spiritual coalition for humanity, the first phase of the covenant of the Millennium, while diplomats unveiled plans for a shared worship center on the Temple Mount, where all religions will worship under the same principles. This seemingly noble unification conceals the prophecy of Revelation 13, the false prophet who will lead the nations into worship of the beast. The merging of political and religious power into human figures has always been the most urgent warning of prophecy. The agreement also introduces elements of absolute control, a global digital identity, a unified currency for religious transactions, and technologies to regulate expressions of faith. What they call evolution and tolerance is, in truth, the great prophesied lie, the one that will come disguised as light, but carries with it impenetrable darkness. The final act has begun. The lead actors are already on stage. Those with discernment stay watchful. The covenant of the Millennium is being hailed as the most extraordinary diplomatic breakthrough of the modern era, an alliance between historic adversaries, a spiritual truce orchestrated by figures claiming to represent global reconciliation. But what the masses fail to see, and what many religious leaders deliberately conceal, is that this very alliance that today sows hope will tomorrow become the instrument of the greatest deception ever witnessed. Daniel 9's prophecy is crystal clear. In the middle of the week, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. The pact will be broken precisely at the midpoint of the appointed time. A force or entity will disrupt the covenant. This rupture will have catastrophic consequences for all of humanity. The early years of the agreement will create a false sense of security. Rosenberg will be celebrated as the statesman who brought peace between Kadesh and the nations of submission. The global media will exalt a new era of religious cooperation. Pope Benedicto will gather spiritual leaders in globally broadcast ceremonies, declaring, "We all serve the same God, just by different names. But at the halfway mark, peace will be abruptly shattered. Confidential documents reveal hidden clauses that will implement systematic surveillance of religious practices, justified as a measure against spiritual extremism. The system will begin with simple registration, evolve into pre-authorization, then full regulation, and ultimately end in the banning of any expression of faith not aligned with the doctrine of universal unity. True worship will be silenced. Scripture will undergo linguistic updates that distort its original meaning. Faithful preachers will be labeled as dangerous extremists. Those who resist the new unified faith, who reject the forced fusion of Christ, Allah, and other deities, will face relentless persecution. The scriptures foretell that the Antichrist will sit in the temple, presenting himself as divine. For this to occur, the temple must first exist, even symbolically. Once that structure is established, even under diplomatic or interfaith pretenses, the stage will be set for his true manifestation. Revelation unveils what follows: a ban on commerce without submission to the global system, deceptive supernatural manifestations, a false resurrection, forced worship, veneration of the image of the beast. All of it will be framed as spiritual evolution, authentic peace, planetary harmony, but at its core it is the preparation for the final judgment of mankind. When the covenant is broken, when the mask falls, many will be unprepared, still celebrating the covenant of the millennium, believing they are witnessing the fulfillment of Isaiah, when in fact they will be living out Daniel 9 and Revelation 13. This is the connection few are seeing. The warning must be proclaimed now. The agreement is being finalized. The stage is complete. The main actors have taken their positions. Soon the breaking of this treaty will trigger the great desolation foretold. This is not theory or speculation. We are witnessing in real time the materialization of prophecies written over 2 millennia ago, an alliance between ancient enemies, a temple being symbolically rebuilt, a political leader uniting nations, a religious figure captivating the crowds, and masses unable to discern the signs. When the covenant is broken, the true nature of these events will be exposed. Illusory peace will give way to persecution. The temple will become a center of rebellion. Worship will be enforced. Truth will be silenced. The call today is not to fear, but to spiritual preparation. As it is written, "He who endures to the end will be saved." You don't need to know every date or decipher every prophetic code, but you must awaken spiritually and stand firm on the unshakable rock, because when deception comes, it will not look evil. It will look like the divine answer everyone has been waiting for. The covenant of the millennium may very well be the activation of Daniel 9's prophecy. If it is, we are the final generation before the return of the King. If this message stirred your spirit, subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications, share this video. Help awaken those who are still asleep, because the decisive moment has arrived.